Hello and welcome to NavTalk. NavTalk is proudly brought to you by the Navwealth Financial Group, helping you reach your destination in life on purpose. My name is Simon Prowse and I'll be your regular host for this series of podcasts. And I look forward to bringing you interviews and content on a broad range of topics. Topics that will be educational, inspirational, informative and at times fun. Well, hi everyone. And welcome to today's NavTalk titled Demystifying Aged Care, the How-To Guide to Getting It Right. For today's discussion, I have the great pleasure of having Andrew Wem, a Director of Navwealth Financial Group and an Aged Care Specialist here to talk to us. Hi there, Andrew.
Hey Simon, how are you?
I'm great, mate. And yourself?
Good.
For Andrew's background, he's got a Bachelor of Science. He then went on to do an MBA in Technology Management before becoming a financial planner. After becoming a financial planner, which involved a number of specialties, Andrew has since become an accredited financial planner, mortgage broker and super fund specialist. And more recently, Andrew has taken on the role of the Aged Care Specialist here at Navwealth. Andrew, tell a bit about aged care. Why aged care?
I think it's an area that has, obviously as family gets older and my client base gets older after giving me advice for over 23 years, it's something that I was getting more and more inquiries about, as was the business. And the more that I looked into it, the more complex I realised that it was, and the more planning was actually needed further out from aged care.
So, Andrew, I note a point that you mentioned that it's complex. Why do you think the aged care situation is so complex?
Because it's an industry that's growing fast in terms of the sheer number of people that need aged care as our population gets older. The styles of accommodation and the care that we need gets more and more complicated, and everybody's situation is different. So, and having money, which many of our clients do have, doesn't guarantee them a place either.
And it's probably not just the financial acumen of the clientele, it's probably got to do with the timing. Is that right?
Yeah, it's at times where people might have a fall or something happens to them suddenly, and you're there being told by doctors or other carers that they need to go into care. And
when you're saying we're being told, is that the actual person going into the facility, or is this normally that decision falling down in terms of the kids of the people?
It's between the doctors telling your parents typically, or yourself as you get older, that you can't go home because you can no longer look after yourself. They're not going to let you go home unless there's somebody there to care for you. Okay. So in terms of the home and where we're going and the whole facility, it's quite a big decision then. It's a huge decision about where you are, where you head to, because where you actually head to is probably not where you should go, because the people that are going to come and see you long term are going to be your children and your family. But initially you might think, well, I want to stay where I am now, which could be a long way from those people. And as your health deteriorates, or the person that you put into care deteriorates, the visitors are your families. Okay, so it's important that the macro looking down at it, that it has some considerations around the extended family. Definitely.
Yeah. I'd like to just take a sidebar for a second and just look at this Aged Care Royal Commission. It's the elephant in the room, so to speak, and there's been a lot of press about it. What's your take on what that's all about?
Really, most of it has, I guess the final outcome of it is there needs to be a lot more money thrown at aged care to improve the services at facilities. And there was a lot of facilities closed down. They couldn't take people on till they improved what they were doing. And then from there, that's about all that really matters to most people, is that the facilities are going to improve and the quality of care is going to improve.
So in short, the Royal Commission has made the industry pull its socks up and really look at the way that this is all working in the aged care industry for the people getting the care. And that then would fall back on what we're going to talk about shortly in regard to picking the right facility.
Definitely.
So, Andrew, going back to your point in terms of the facilities or aged care itself, and it being something that we're not really versed on until it's thrust upon us, What do you see the space for advice in this area?
So it's definitely around planning ahead, right? Being prepared that this could be a reality, understanding your finances, what you can afford or what you're prepared to pay for care and what you need to pay, where that care is going to be. And then really on the back of that, by planning ahead, we can change ownership of assets. We can make care a lot more affordable to more people. And if you've had a look at a lot of facilities over a number of years leading up to needing to go to care, then if something sudden does happen, you've already got a short list of facilities to go to that you've already said, I don't mind that facility, I don't mind that facility. So applying becomes easier and quicker.
So in this space, you'd recommend an advisor to demystify or provide some guidance?
Look, I've found it complex enough by studying it and then trying to make heads and tails of a lot of the numbers that are involved. There's 4 different fees that can be charged. Some are some charged to every client and others are charged to some clients. And understanding what fees you will pay is not easy, especially if there's Centrelink involved and how we can reduce fees around Centrelink.
Well, it sounds to me then advice is paramount in this process, even if it's not on the aged care facility itself, it's in planning for aged care and how to make it work best for your wallet.
And what money do you need to keep aside for aged care?
Yeah, right. Tell me, Navwealth and you in Navwealth have built this process around the advice. Tell us a little bit about the Navwealth process.
So I think where we start with the process is trying to understand what your goals are, what you would like to have happen if you were to go to care, who is going to go into care, when are you likely to go into care, the type of different health issues, where that facility is and what you'll pay can differ dramatically between one side of the hill and the other side of a hill, right, by the same provider.
So I liken that a little bit to buying a house, but with a lot more strings attached.
Definitely. However, we've all grown up in houses and we've all chosen our houses. What we want is to see you have some choice in where you go once you're told that you need to go into aged care. And that's what I think the planning will give you, is that choice of type of facility that you go to, because you understand your finances before you've had a look. Then you can narrow it down a bit further to where that facility is. Okay,
so that's the foundation, if you like, the goals. And then what other steps are involved in the process?
Well, we want to try to minimise the costs of care. And by understanding your unique situation, whether you own a home, whether you're on Centrelink, whether you want to keep the home, sell the home, what do you want to do with this home, what do the beneficiaries want with your assets, we then really hone in on what assets we should be using to fund this accommodation.
So it's actually a really complicated process when it comes to the financial side, it sounds like.
If we can take into account what the beneficiaries would like with the assets, we will.
So generally the process will involve the whole of the family. Is that common, or is it more that the 1 or 2 members of the family are taking this on? How does that work?
There's normally, people will have enduring powers of attorney and powers of attorney over their parents, and it's normally a couple of siblings or one sibling that's driving it, but then when it comes to presenting advice and so forth, we'll have a Zoom meeting or a team meeting, or get everybody in, get all the siblings on the same page so they can all approve what's happening. So we try to get rid of all of that to keep the family at peace with the decisions that are being made.
So it's very much a family buy-in to this whole process.
Definitely.
Specifically the process, from what I understand, we've got our goals, and then give us a real quick step through. What's next?
Yeah, we'll gather all the financial data we possibly can and get a good understanding of any capital gains tax that's in the portfolio, where assets are, and then from there we'll start modelling some options of how to pay.
How many models will you quite often?
We typically run 5 different models.
Okay, and that's got to do with the way you structure your finances around the aged care facility, or how much you've got to spend on aged care?
A little bit around both, because at the moment, and certainly over the last few years, keeping the family home made good sense because property was growing at such a fast rate. So people wanted to understand, well, how much cash do we need to have to get mum in there and still retain the home.
So you've done the financial modelling, and then you present the models, and then I dare say that's when the family take it in consideration and have their group discussion. And now, once you've identified those models and effectively the monetary considerations around it, I dare say then that gives you a nice sweet spot in order to go and find the aged care facility that suits your clientele or suits the family.
That's it. That's exactly it. And then we can help people with finding the right facility. We refer out to different companies that can help you find a facility, a bit like as a buyer's agent for a home. Alternatively, there are government websites that you can look at to get a feel for what's around your area, around the area where you want to go. And then from there, you need to go and kick some tyres. Go and hop in and have a look at some of these facilities. If people are assessed for aged care already, then going in for some respite care for a week in one facility or a week in another facility so they get a bit of a try before you buy is really nice, because in some instances I've had people choose facilities just because they like the food. So it can come down to very funny little nuances between different facilities for why you might go there.
Well, going back to the point you made, is there a way to I suppose, sort the places in terms of the financials? Do you narrow down the focus based on that? How does that work?
If money is an issue, then yeah, absolutely. There's a government website where all the aged care facilities have to list their prices, so you can see how much their RADs are, or their entry bond is, and from there you can go and have a look.
You said an interesting acronym there, or mentioned an interesting acronym, RAD, I think you said. What's that mean?
Yeah, so a RAD is your refundable accommodation deposit, which is really the money that they ask for up front to go in. In reality, you don't have to pay any of it. You can borrow all the money and just pay the interest on a loan, so to speak, or you can pay it all up front, or a combination of the two. Okay,
and being a deposit or refundable deposit, which you mentioned, what happens at the end?
At the end, the government actually guarantee these deposits, so your money is very secure. It doesn't grow, however. So thinking about how much money you want to pay in the deposit versus how much do you want to keep in assets that are growing is a big consideration in our planning.
So the RAD, or the refundable deposit, that doesn't compensate for your daily costs of being in the facility?
No, there's an extra fee, which is your daily accommodation cost, which is paid by every person in aged care, and it changes every quarter. So it's in the order of $53, $55 a day at the moment, which is set at 85% of the single age pension. Okay, so that part of your aged care facility costs, if you like, is supposed to cover your daily living, whereas the refundable deposit really covers your asset of living in the facility, but being in the facility, but living there is this other cost. Correct. And then there's means tested fees based on the assets that you own, which is something that we do a lot of work with people on trying to minimise at that time. So we pay less means tested fees. And we also do a lot of work in terms of trying to manoeuvre assets out of people's names, so at the time of entering care they don't have many assets.
So these costs, the daily costs if you like, are being means tested. Is there ways or strategies of working out to get that right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of work that we can do ahead of time with planning to help make sure that we structure the assets that individuals have in their name.
When should we start the process of aged care and assessing aged care needs?
I think as something changes with your health is really a trigger. And as soon as you know, say someone gets diagnosed with early stages of dementia, start there and then. Right, that's an easy example to do it because other things are harder to say when. But with dementia, start. Come and see us, start to plan ahead for this. We can't actually get on a waiting list into a facility until you're actually in a bad way and you've been assessed for needing care.
Okay. So if there was a line in the sand, so to speak, then obviously you start. And if you don't know, well, it's very hard to plan. How do you get about it at Navwealth? How do you go about planning or considerations in this space without it being a pressing need?
We actually look at it as clients get a little bit older. Often things like downsizing your home, you're buying a new property, you might be moving into different styles of accommodation over 55s. We'll have a discussion around who should own that property, what should it be, tenants in common or joint tenants. When we do different assets and we invest money, should it be in one person's name, should it be in joint names? So we can take care of a lot of things and I guess have the assets in the right names.
So this has a dramatic effect on the actual costs when it comes to the RAD and the daily accommodation fee when you get to the facility.
Definitely, because you can gift any money away to anybody anytime you like. However, it can come back and bite you when you go to aged care because it's treated differently.
Yeah, there's these special rules on amount you're allowed to give away in terms of the government pension test.
Yes.
Is that right?
But you can will it away and it doesn't count.
Okay.
So looking at your wills, having powers of attorney in place, making sure that the right people are allowed to look after you as your needs change, is really paramount as well. So we'll make sure that you've got all those right documents in place as well.
So I'd just like to circle back a little bit on this wait list concept and being able to get into aged care. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's because we're living longer, there's more people in aged care and there's not enough aged care facilities coming online each year. And one of the stats that I like is that I don't like the stat, but there's 33% of people wait more than 9 months to get into care because you can't go and put your name down in a facility until you're actually diagnosed as needing care.
So I sort of put this in the chicken and the egg category. You need the care, but you can't go on the wait list to get into a care facility until you need the care.
Correct. It's not like school where you can book yourself in 20 years out and know you've got a spot at all. No.
So, frankly, a lot of people could miss the facility they're trying to get into, really, once they identify it.
Absolutely. It's the luck of the draw. And then you have to be like a squeaky door gets the most oil. You have to be just like that, ringing the facilities manager and trying to get in.
The alternative, if let's say we find a facility that we like, it's got a wait list, can we do a short-term approach for a period of a year or two, or you're generally going to be stuck?
No, you can move facilities. It's not always easy to move facilities because you get reassessed, things like that. So all your costs, fees and charges will get reassessed as you move.
The so-called RAD, however, would be protected and move with you, or is that also reassessed?
No, well, each facility has its own RAD.
Okay.
So you might find that you get into a facility that's got a RAD of $500,000, but the one you really want to go into is $1 million.
Oh, is that dramatic?
RADs can vary from $300,000 to $1.6 million.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then the daily accommodation fee is the one that's
fixed,
managed by the government and sort of got a relationship back to the means and living costs.
Yes. And then there's extra service fees if you want a glass of wine or you want foxtel or all of those sorts of things, but they're flat fees in the facility, which doesn't make sense for a lot of people, especially dementia patients that are paying extra service fees for services they can't use.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense.
But they have to pay it.
So it's sort of a bit like a hotel and picking a hotel, but there's more to it because you're there for a long time. And if the hotel's got a wait list, well, you could have to pick the hotel next door, and it's very hard to move back to the hotel you want to be in.
It's very much like that. So you need to know your numbers. You need to plan ahead. You need to have visited some sites to know which facilities, if something happens urgently, that you're prepared to jump on at a moment's notice.
So, Andrew, from today's discussions, and there was quite a broad range of areas, what are your key takeaway or tips for people if they're considering aged care?
I think make sure you've got the right documents in place, so the right people that you trust can take care of you. So have enduring powers of attorney in place. Start early, have discussions. If you're selling assets, you're buying assets, whose name should these assets be in? Start having a look at some facilities in your area, just to be curious as to what they're like, and get some advice, even if it's just a chat initially, to say, what are some of the things that we should be looking at this point in our lives?
Well, I'm certainly enlightened, and I'm enlightened in a scared way. If it is very murky indeed, and it sounds like, or to me, that advice is paramount in making this work. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Andrew. For anyone out there wanting to speak to Andrew, he's the Aged Care Specialist at Navwealth Financial Group, located in St Leonards at North Sydney. And Andrew, once again, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks for joining us today for NavTalk. You can listen to other podcasts in the NavTalk series via YouTube or where you get your favourite podcasts, or simply search NavTalk. Be sure to follow Navwealth on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook or Twitter. And please, if there are any particular topics you would like us to cover for a future episode, let us know via our website. I'm Simon Prowse. Until we talk again.